Hi, my name is Sally Elias Kezi, the Cake MD, and today I want to walk you through some things that I make homemade and that you can too. So I started thinking about this lately because my teenage daughter called my household, our household, an ingredient household, which really got me thinking, and I realized I really like that term because that's the way we've been headed for the last few years. In other words, trying to get away from processed foods and supermarket foods toward more homemade foods and ingredients. And this really for me combines my doctor hat, pediatrician hat with my baking and cooking hat. Let me tell you why. I have been trying for most of my career and at home with my family to encourage people to get away from processed foods, and especially children. And so often this seems like a very daunting task if you try to do it all at once and try to convert your whole household to an ingredient household. So instead of talking to you about a full conversion, I'm going to talk to you just about few things. Maybe you pick up one thing, maybe two things that you can start making at home, working toward using less processed foods. Now, a couple of caveats. I don't expect you to go out and buy a bunch of equipment or a bunch of food items to start making your own homemade foods. If you can do a couple of things and maybe you're interested in buying one or two pieces of equipment, great. That's why when I show you some of the things that I make at home, I'm going to talk to you about what requires a lot of investment of your time and a lot of investment of your money versus a little investment of time and money. And you do what feels right for you. I tend to be a kitchen gadget junkie. I love kitchen gadgets more than I love clothes, shoes, or jewelry. So whenever it's Mother's Day or birthdays, that's what I ask for, but I'm not expecting you to be like me. All right, so I'm going to start with one of the simplest things that you can make at home. And for me, one of the more important things that I like to encourage kids to do as a pediatrician. That is making your own homemade yogurt. Why do I think this is important? I think, and this is not my personal opinion, this is from listening to the gurus of food and cooking, that we are missing fermented foods in our diet. And although a lot of the foods that we buy at the supermarket, like yogurt, might claim that it's fermented and has probiotics, I think that's not super reliable. So I'd like to encourage you, first of all, to make your own homemade yogurt. And this is what I would call low investment of your time and low investment of your money. This is a yogurt machine that you can buy off of Amazon or Target, maybe $30 to $40 depending on the type of machine you buy. I have graduated to this machine which has a timer, but before that I just had a plain old machine without a timer, and that also worked just fine. So as far as other investment of money, we're talking about some whole milk or low-fat milk. And you don't need to buy organic. Actually, I don't, because I find that the organic milks that I have in my supermarket tend to be ultra pasteurized, which won't work for yogurt. So you can buy plain old whole milk yogurt, or if you really want to, you can buy a cream top milk from Sprouts, which has a little bit less pasteurization and less homogenization, and you can use that to make your own yogurt. So you've got a lot of choices. Like I said, low investment of time and money, great product. You can have your fermented, probiotic-full food at home. So this is a dehydrator. Now, a little bit more investment of your money, but it's not necessary. If you don't want to buy a dehydrator, you can also dehydrate foods in your oven. So, what do I like to put in my dehydrator? Well, the obvious things are dehydrated fruit and dehydrated vegetables. But I also like to do candied orange slices. This is one of my favorite things to put in the dehydrator. I love to use candied orange peel during the holidays for my baked goods. So instead of buying them from the supermarket already made, I'm not fond of their taste, I will make them during orange season in Florida and then keep them in my fridge. And they keep very nicely if properly dehydrated. The other thing I like to do is candied lemon peel. Also for my baked goods, I have a bit of candied ginger that's almost done. I like to take leftover few-day-old bread to make our homemade croutons, and these are herbed croutons, and those keep very well in the pantry as long as they're dehydrated correctly. And although I'm a horrible gardener, I do manage to grow some pretty decent herbs. Those are hard to kill. And then I'll dehydrate like basil to keep for later. Like today, I'm cooking some spaghetti sauce. So either a dehydrator or just your oven, but dehydrated foods are a great thing to have in your pantry and your fridge.
Secret item.
This is my special baby. This is my cheese fridge, and I make homemade cheese. This would be a large investment of your time. Now, whether it's a large investment of your money is debatable. If you already have a wine fridge at home and you're not using it, you can fairly easily convert it to a cheese fridge. So let's say moderate investment of money. I had a wine fridge I wasn't really using that much, and so I converted it with a few extra pieces of pretty inexpensive equipment into a cheese fridge. I've got a humidifier in there, probably costs about $30 to $40. I've got this little ink bird which controls my humidity, and I have a hygrometer, which is a humidifier measurement tool, like a thermometer but for humidity. And I have, a couple of bamboo shelves here. So cheese can be anything for you. I've got Parmesan and an Egyptian Rumi cheese, but I've also got some feta cheese, which is a little bit less tricky to make in there. And I will make ricotta, but that just goes in the fridge. So cheese, you can make that at home. You could just do ricotta, you could just do mozzarella, or you could go for the big stuff and make your own parm. Next thing I would say is low investment of time and money, probably the lowest investment of time and money. This is some homemade red wine vinegar that I'm fermenting. I've actually started doing this fairly recently, but this was a great way for me to use up leftover wine, which yes, we do have leftover wine. And all you need for this is your leftover wine and an organic vinegar mother that you buy from the supermarket, and you use that vinegar mother, which is like a starter for vinegar, and you mix it with the red wine that you have left over, and you let it ferment for a month or two. And then once it's finished fermenting, you can add more wine to it and keep it going. I think this is going to make a great Christmas gift for my friends and family. So this is the fridge. I have a few things that I wanted to show you here. So because I make a lot of dessert and especially entremets, I like to do some inverted syrup and simple syrup running out here ahead of time and keep them in the fridge. This saves a lot of money for me, especially the inverted syrup. You can make this easily at home yourself. I recommend a plastic container, not a glass one, or it'll crystallize. And you could keep it here really for months, and that'll save you a ton of money and not much effort. I like to make some spice blends. So this is an Egyptian spice blend called do'a. And I like to store that in the fridge, and that'll stay for a long time too. This is the obvious one, my sourdough starter. He lives in the fridge. And I guess I don't have to talk to you about sourdough bread because everybody pretty much knows about that. and finally some creme fraiche. So when I have a bit of leftover heavy cream and a bit of buttermilk, I'll make my own creme fraiche, and that'll store for 2 weeks. And that's very easy to make. Actually, that's like 0 time, because all you have to do is mix the buttermilk and the cream and let it sit out for 24 hours.
All right, freezer time.
All right, freezer time. So in the freezer, I've got some obvious things. I save all my leftover egg whites. I try not to throw any whites or yolks away, because you can freeze them so easily and reuse them later. I also save aquafaba. Whenever I have chickpeas that I don't need the aquafaba at that moment, I'll drain off the water and save it for my vegan desserts. This is also pretty obvious. I mean, I save any leftover buttercreams, ganaches, tart shells, things like that. But let me talk to you about some other things I save. So I will make fruit purees. Fruit purees can be very expensive to buy ready-made. So when I have a good stock of fresh fruit, I will just add some sugar to it, blend it, and then sieve out the seeds and freeze my fruit purees for when I need it. This one is a raspberry fruit puree. I'll also make croissant dough in bulk and split it up into portions, and then whenever I would like to make some croissant, I just pull it out of the freezer. I keep an ice cream machine bowl in the freezer at all times. I finally succumbed to buying one of those because I couldn't take it with the kids asking me for supermarket ice cream. And then finally, I save leftover cake pieces. So these are tops of cakes that I cut off. I'll save this for either cake pops or for my strudel or for a Filipino cookie called Silvana. So cake crumbs are always useful. Now we have some more freezer items, this time on the savory side of things. So we have started collecting leftover onions or onion peels, carrot shavings, carrot tops, celery tops. So we've started collecting them in a freezer bag, and when we fill up this freezer bag, we make our own vegetable stock. And this is actually not that difficult as it sounds, especially if you have an Instant Pot. The Instant Pot makes easy work of vegetable stock. If you don't have an Instant Pot, that's okay too. You could still do this on the stove. I would say this takes almost zero investment of money, a little investment of your time. But if you just wait until you have a full bag of carrot, onion, and celery tops, and you just set aside a couple of hours to make your stock, you'll be good to go. And then you put it in the jars and freeze it. Don't fill it all the way up to the top or the glass will crack, because it happened to one of them for me. In addition to vegetable stock, we make chicken stock with bones. And I have some soup. Split pea soup happens to be one of my favorites. I'll make a lot of those and store it in the freezer. Okay? All right. In my cabinet, I have fat. I have clarified butter, also known as ghee. In Egypt, we call it semna. And I have tallow. You can do this both yourself. If you have some time, clarify the butter yourself over the stove. And once it's rendered, meaning all the water has been removed, it can be stored in your pantry for several months. So can tallow. Tallow is beef fat. And if you're cooking some beef, you can also render the fat from the beef and keep it indefinitely as long as all the water's been removed. It's the same process for making lard. So zero investment of your money because it's stuff you already have at home. A little bit of investment of your time. And finally, this is Oscar. Oscar the Grouch, of course, the garbage man. Oscar is our composter. We've had this for a few months now, and this is basically the last stop for all food in our kitchen. When we can't use it for stock or for anything else, we will put our leftover greens, fruits, and eggshells and coffee grounds into our composter and make compost to help me in my not so successful gardening venture. And that's it for now. This is part 1. I will do another one later and show you what else we can make at home. I hope you enjoyed it and picked up a few tips, and maybe we'll start with even just making homemade yogurt. Thanks.